Welcome, everyone, to the 5th episode of the Hound podcast. I, Fraser Hill, the leader of the National Distributors Party, am joined today by the former leader of the National Distributors Party, Tyler White. Would you like to introduce yourself? You've been on the podcast before.
Yeah, I've been on the podcast before. If you're interested in the NDP, I'm going to take it for granted that you sort of know who I am a
They've
little
heard of
bit.
you.
Yeah.
You're
So,
C-list.
but yeah, I've been in the background for way too long now. Everyone's forgotten me. But if you're looking into the NDP for the first time, I was the leader of the NDP from 2020 to December last year. Helped set up the party. I was the party's first councillor in Nailsworth, Gloucestershire. Yeah, since Fraser's taken over, more than pleased with the work he's been doing, really reinvigorating the party. So yeah, it's been good to watch from the sidelines actually and see a new fresh take on the NDP bring the movement forwards.
Thank you, Tyler. It's actually quite funny that you mention, or I suppose it was going to be talked about, but it is quite funny to me at least, that you bring up your approval of my leadership. Because the other day I said to someone that my leadership has brought a new energy to the party, a sign of confidence in the direction we're taking now. And do you know what someone responded to that comment with?
Well, I did see it on Twitter. Whether you would like to describe it,
Someone
because
sent the picture of the stab in the back myth. So
yeah, and that was so funny to me. I actually I burst out laughing
I found it quite funny as
because
well.
because
I've
if anyone
checked that at
asks
work.
me personally, oh, what do you think of Fraser or anything like that, I'll outright say, yeah, no, it's great that he's leader because he has more time than I did back when I was leader, so he's able to do more. He's better suited and in a better position to be leader. So it makes sense. It's not a stab in the back for you to say that. I'll say it myself.
Mate, anyway, today's episode is going to be a step away from the theory side of distributism and a brief respite to enjoy the current events. It's a topical episode. I say topical. This will probably come out weeks after we discuss these things, but alas, we discuss them. Tyler, as you have composed the list of topics for today, if you want to launch us straight into the
Yep.
first one, so I can voice my
So
disgust or disapproval or surprise.
yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and do that. So the first topic we're going to talk about today is the Clacton by-election. Very topical. I'm sure everyone's been talking about it this week. What are your thoughts on the result, Fraser?
Pretty expected, to be fair. Depressing, but expected. Binface got, what was it, 25% of the vote?
27% of the vote.
27%. 27% of Clacton residents voted for a cunt in a bin. 72% voted for Farage, which again, depressing, because 72% of people voted for a cunt in a suit. And a very small amount of Clacton residents, probably the majority of Jaywick, voted for actual patriotic candidates, like Guy Stevens of the British Democratic Party, who did not try to burn down a pier. But the overall takeaway from it, from me, was that it was a farce from beginning to end. And I don't blame people for trying to get involved in it and to try to capitalize on the media attention afforded to the whole affair. But very little utility has been derived from the election. I don't believe that certain decent parties, I say decent, all-right parties, like the British Democrats and the Social Democratic Party, I don't believe that they will come away from this looking too well. I had hopes that they would bring in fresh membership and energy by advertising themselves in Clacton, but we'll allow the dust to clear. I'm not so optimistic, I suppose. It seems that Farage and Binface, the middle class MP from London and the middle class Have I Got News for You comedy writer from London, have stolen the show. And that just goes to show the power of the media, really. What about you? Depressed?
Uh, so I'm waiting for the financial results to come out. I want to see how
Um,
much the small parties spent on their campaigns because the British Democrats, the candidate we were backing, I guess, the distributist candidate Guy Stevens,
as
got
a
on
party,
actually
not
a really,
officially,
really
yeah,
big
but
campaign.
yeah, yeah.
And for the to be a very realist about the result in Clacton, potentially for the money spent to get the result that they did is probably a net negative when you think that that campaign, the money spent there, probably could have been distributed across a whole a whole handful of local campaigns where the message would probably hit harder and not be drowned out in the sea of candidates.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate reality of first past the post voting, isn't it? That basically it's a waste of time until you are ready to sweep the entire election, until they're ready to sweep
Yeah,
the entirety
essentially.
of Commons. It's difficult. But at the same time, you do have to try and fight elections. You can't just completely surrender the playing field to other parties. And I think the British Democrats, who, yeah, I, at least personally, endorsed out of all of the candidates at hand, think that they did admirably for the size of their party and the resources available to them. They put on a good show, but people just didn't watch it.
Another issue with the Clacton by-election that we have to really talk about is how the media presented it.
Mm,
The media didn't try and find a good candidate to rival Farage. They went instantly for the joke candidate.
mm,
Whereas, if the people who were voting in Clacton wanted an alternative to the Labour Party or any of the establishment parties, the SDP was there to represent them almost perfectly. Instead of putting another party on a prominent pedestal, the media, probably backed by the establishment parties in total uniformity, probably chose to back the joke candidate specifically so a new party couldn't grab any of the reins of media attention from this by-election. It was, it really was the SDP's
stab in the back.
almost crown in the street moment,
Yeah.
crown in the gutter, but the media denied them of that because the media is fully sold out to the establishment parties, including Reform.
100%. The the leap by not just the media, but by establishment politicians to endorse the guy from London, Binface. I don't want to call him that. I want to call him by his government name because that's ultimately what he is, what he was. You know, a government stooge, a middle class, a fat liberal loser. They backed him, yeah, in order to keep the circus running because any real candidate could have stepped in and mounted a campaign. The SDP got robbed, as did the British Democrats, of a fair chance to stand as anti-immigration candidates for one of the most deprived areas in the country. Deprived on the doorstep of London, which now is obviously, or has always has been, the centre of finance, the centre of wealth in the country and power. And so it doesn't encourage my hopes in electoral democracy in this country. But it does increase my hopes for younger nationalists and for the general cause of nationalism, because at least people did show up to volunteer, to be active. People online And in alternative media spaces like Twitter, they were on board, they were clued in to the by-election. They were in lockstep behind the alternative candidate, the alternative candidates, I should say. But did they translate that into real-world gains? Did they get out there themselves, these people who claim to support remigration or a sensible alternative to establishment governance? Did they get out there and in the months leading up to these elections, not just Clacton, but Makerfield and Gorton and Denton, did they lay the groundwork for successful campaigns? Or did they rush it on the day and experience very little success as a result of it? They should have been, we really should be doing this everywhere since you cannot anticipate by-elections, be creating nationalist fraternities and sororities, groups on a horizontal level, a local level, that can ultimately push vertically and move for national power and success. But trying to put the national level before the local level just results in embarrassing, humiliating defeats like this for our candidates. Losing to a man in a fucking bin suit. It's... yeah.
It is a bit depressing having to say losing to a man in a bin suit, but they didn't lose to a man in a bin suit. All
No.
of the chips were stacked against them.
They lost to the
So
organs of
we
international finance and the media.
exactly, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So...
Even the left wing rejoin EU, I think they were called. I think they were like the top of the minor parties in the election. That should have been their election as well to have a decent chance at getting a good result. I'm obviously not. I don't want to defend rejoin EU party, but like they had it equally as stolen as we on the right did. It's across the board.
the people had it stolen from them. The people of
Exactly.
Clacton
Yeah.
had the
Yeah.
election stolen from them. That's the takeaway. Any sort of real representation in our representative democracy was shattered by the fact that the two real candidates, the two candidates who had any chance of winning, thanks to the support of the media and their centering, their normalization of the reality, or of their own reality, I suppose, they robbed the people of Clacton of choosing for themselves what candidates were important, what candidates represented them. And they had two middle class, if not upper class people from London foist upon them. And the whole thing was just a sham. 100%.
I'd just say, as we're talking about elections and on the topic, the National Distributors Party has had two victories in having two new councillors now, uh, which is absolutely fantastic news. We've now had, in the total of our pretty short history, we've had three total councillors, and we're looking at gaining more in the May elections next year. So if anybody's listening to this and looks into the NDP and goes, you know, this is the party we need in British politics, please feel free to send us an email, step forwards. We're always looking for candidates. Um, yeah, we'll put our full weight behind you.
That's very fitting for you to say, as you are our new elections officer. You've been cooking up the papers, haven't you, to send out to people to try and bring as many of our existing membership into candidacy as possible. I do think it's very telling of political individuals, especially of nationalists, of the politically involved today, who bypass the lowest levels of representative government and British politics, and they jump straight to district, county, and parliamentary level, trying to win victories there that really are founded in success on the local level. They do this because these are the attractive and flashy government positions, the ones that you can advertise to prospective members and to your enemies to say, we're a successful political movement. Just look how many town or county or district or councillors or MPs that we have. But the real work, or at least the unsung work, of keeping the country ticking day to day is done by almost completely unpaid parish councillors who just see to the most minor of issues. Even town councillors, which is what I have become now for my local area. I am one of the councillors that Tyler just mentioned. The work that we do, that I've done for a very short time, that my colleagues have done for a lot longer than me, though, the kind of work that we do is what keeps communities ticking. The government couldn't care how our local green spaces are maintained. They couldn't care about organising our charity fetes, or our firework displays, or our Remembrance Day parades. They don't care about keeping our culture alive on the local level. We have to do that. And I think it's very disingenuous and telling for political figures to advocate for jumping to the national level directly, because it displays that they, just like the vultures in Parliament, the Westminster criminals, they don't care about maintaining our culture. These people who promise you the world, they aren't prepared to look after their own doorstep. And so, yes, I do think that any political movement has to start on the lowest level, quietly amassing local representation, quietly building neighbour networks, community pride, and then they progress to the national level by demonstrating to the whole country just what they will do for the country, which is essentially a reflection of what they do for their own local communities.
I think this is actually quite a good segue. I think it was passed a few weeks ago. I call it the Labour Aesthetics Bill. The bill, I think most people would know, saying that we need to have almost a standardized shopfront aesthetic in a lot of our towns. And when you say that the central government doesn't care what our towns look like, the Labour Aesthetics Bill is so overdue because of how bad the the trashing of our high streets has gotten by like the Turkish barbers, the vape shops, and just really, really disgusting looking signs, and the government didn't care, absolutely didn't care, because this has been going on for 10 years now, I think, and now that it's reached its peak where some high streets are just all, you know, these corner shops, barber shops, and vape shops. Only now has Labour stepped in to try to boost their ratings and put forwards that actually we do need to care about our town centres, but they're only going to change the signage. They're not going to outlaw the shops themselves or look into the shops for money laundering, as we know happens.
Well, also, as they continue to devolve power, they are likely to give the tools of enforcement, the avenues through which these shopfronts may be corrected and improved in terms of their aesthetics, straight over to the communities that have taken over these high streets, that have built these shopfronts. And I don't really anticipate much self-policing or aesthetic discipline from the same people who thought it was something they could get away with in the first place. These local councillors, who are all foreign in some areas, are not going to encourage their local police forces, which are of course also staffed by foreign individuals these days, or at least by pro-immigration liberals, to close down these shops or to put the boot in their backs and to force them to improve their aesthetics. I just don't see it happening. Not while these people are allowed to have political power and local institutional power.
Well, as we know how councils are run, say in Tower Hamlets, which is probably the shining example of independent sort of foreign rule in the country. The councils are really corrupt. So when if the power is devolved, the areas that will improve are the the villages in the Cotswolds, up in the Lake District, those sorts of places that will enforce these rules, but the decline will only go further and further in places where the in the enclaves they already rule over themselves.
Mm. The enclaves will continue to worsen while white Britain perhaps makes a recovery. A small one, of course, considering the hostility of the government to white Britain, whether it be city, town, or rural. But it might make a recovery, which is in some ways encouraging. Some of Labour's policies in the last 2-3 years have been quite encouraging, actually, including their steadily improving, steadily intensifying stance on immigration, on mass immigration. So, it's a bandage on a missing arm, but it's perhaps something. I wanted to say as well that this sudden care and concern for aesthetics is something that we would enshrine as part of our government, as part of our national policy. And I think that, again, a sincere nationalist party needs to be worried about the aesthetics of our country. It's what would set them apart from a populist, a Thatcherite party that simply wears the skin of remigration or mass deportations, for example. Because the endless construction of housing, for example, or of, well, what you could call slum housing, HMOs, basically cages to have our new Europeans forced into, is completely unsustainable when infrastructure is not put in place to match the growing population. You have to think not just on the larger scale about, say, water reservoirs or power generation, but even on the smaller scale. Where do the local clinics, the small GPs and pharmacies come from for these people? Where are the provisions made for these chemists and pharmacies in the planning acts, in the planning proposals? Where is the provision for public houses or village halls or other small social spaces in these planning proposals? What about churches? Are we building new churches to service these new residential areas? Or depending on the ever declining number of ecclesiastic venues in this country? Certainly, the number of foreign religious venues only continues to increase. But where is the concern for native, indigenous faith venues and gathering spaces? No planning proposal should come that touts 100 new houses, but 0 shops, 0 pubs, and 0 churches, among many other things, of course. But the point is that aesthetics is part of building a cohesive and homogenous nation, and any nationalist party needs to bring back this focus on aesthetics.
Aesthetics build the national character. If your country looks like every other country, then you're going to, if you've only grown up in that sort of one size fits all across the world, you're going to grow up and believe that Britain isn't a special place. Whereas I can tell you, Britain is a really special place in terms of just how the people act, the way it looks, and so an aesthetics bill to protect that and save it for the future generations instead of just letting the decline just keep going and going and going. It's gonna take legislation until a government with the actual will to do it and a government that also brings a more not sort of like a spiritual side, but a way to reinvigorate the people in general to care about aesthetics as well and start creating the aesthetics without being told to do so. It will take a long time to revive England's aesthetics to where it was probably 100 years ago. Although we'll try not to recreate the smokestacks of Birmingham, for example, but the nice sort of biscuit tin, cottage, or I mean the aesthetics of Chelsea and Kensington, like the nice Georgian buildings. That sort of thing is what we need to try to bring back because it's those aesthetics that make Britain such a special place where you can go to different cities and they look completely different. There's completely different feelings between Bath and Manchester. But what we're threatened with is that Bath and Manchester in 100 years' time are going to look the same and feel the same, and the people there are going to act the same.
Un-English.
It, it's about defending diversity. Like in a weird way, it's about defending the diversity of the English people, the English nation.
People are welcome to clip that. We love diversity at the National
We
Distributors
love
Party.
diversity.
We adore diversity. But you can leave your foreign things on the doorstep. I agree completely. It's one of the most beautiful things about traveling. It is the engagement with different things, with other great cultures, other great civilizations. Traveling to other parts of the Anglosphere, for example, you see how our kinsmen, no matter how many miles or years separate us, have developed their own unique but still British ways of living. You see just where their history, the same history we share, of course, has taken them. But the drive nowadays is to completely roll over all history, to roll over all differences and diverging developments, and to impose upon everyone sameness, whether that be the same architecture, the same art, the same ethnicities or cultures or languages. There's just a push to flatten every difference that the good peoples of the world have between one another. And that is ultimately another service that is done at the behest of finance. Because people who do not differ in the way they live their lives or think do not differ in their consumption habits. And thus, you can sell anything to them, any manner of lies, any manner of product, and they will lap it up. And so it's even more insidious than, say, white genocide and demographic replacement. It's simply the servile state. It's simply economic slavery. But
It is a very sad fact that the best our elites can come up with is to turn every individual peoples into one almost hive mind society where the individual will be replaced by a tracksuit clad roadman. That's the best our elites can do. Those are our new unhappy lords. And it's why we need sort of new movements to come into the fold and have more of a an emphasis on like aesthetics and give people more of a national mission instead of and giving people an actual stake in society again. If you have your own piece of land and you're engaged in the community, you have your stake in the community, you care about the community. Whereas whereas just what we have now is nation of individuals. So even though people know uh, all of this is going on, and the parties on our sphere only talk about immigration, really, it doesn't address the whole issue.
mm,
So if we had a party come in that just cares about immigration, they're going to ignore the other um
really pressing issues.
yeah, the other root causes that bring people to not care about their environment. You know, sort of uh, broken window theory in a way. Like people see that, oh, my town's gone to ruin. Oh, I might as well just start throwing litter on the street, kind of thing.
Well, they mimic the sort of behaviour they see. And if there's no pushback for poor behaviour, then they continue to do it. Littering on the street is one of the things that most clearly symbolises that. If you litter and there are no punishments, no consequences, then you can just litter again whenever you feel like it. Where did you,
You can
where,
litter and you can litter until your street looks like the Ganges.
basically, and is obviously populated by individuals from the Ganges?
Yep.
I was going to say, where do you know New Unhappy Lords from?
I actually know it because I was in a car boot sale in Frampton on Severn, and I think I must have been 17, 18. So I just got into distributing.
Decades ago, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was a young lad, sprightly young lad.
5 minutes ago.
Um, yeah, pretty much. And I was just walking along, and there was just this car boot stall where there was loads of books on Rhodesia, actually. Um, and there was a load of AK Chesterton there. But um, me being me in 5 years ago, I was like, oh, AK Chesterton? No, that's bad. That's fascism. I only like GK, and now when I look back at it, I'm like, damn, there was probably a treasure trove of stuff in that place.
It's actually, yeah, the
Well,
reason I ask about New Unhappy Lords is because I actually came into possession of some AK Chesterton works. Have you heard of Candor magazine?
I have, yeah, yeah. I know of it. I've not read any of it.
Well, I have. A week ago, I purchased 110 issues of Candor magazine, basically the entirety of the 1970s. It's actually really good, hard hitting stuff, and brings up a lot of the issues that we have today with perfect clarity. He's talking about repatriation, he's talking about international finance, he's talking about aesthetics, good mentions of his cousin, GK, and actually, there was something I read today about Arthur Kenneth's arguments with a colonel of the SAS, David Sterling. And apparently, having defeated him in an argument held, by the way, about multiracialism in Rhodesia in the 1950s or 60s, David Sterling resorted to calling Arthur Kenneth Chesterton a fascist, just calling him a fascist, and hoping that would carry the debate. Well, it seems that the same tactics are in employment now by the very same media organs and establishment stooges. Regardless, yes, every single issue of this Candle magazine has been advertising AK's book, which at the time, the one that had just come out, I believe, was The New Unhappy Lords. So, yeah. Small world. Chestertons are a good
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
No,
And
Chestertons
car
are a
boots
good
in
lot.
Frampton on Severn. We should go to one, see if they're still kicking around. Go get some new
What?
material.
Imagine you go to the car boot sale. We've had no luck finding anything. Oh, let's just turn around and go home for the day. Are you guys looking for some nationalist literature? Nick Griffin. Nick
No,
Griffin's
it's
got
Alec Yerbury in his gazebo.
a pop-up gazebo at the back of a car. To be fair, I mean, I'm always interested in reading nationalist literature that comes from any sort of background, any sort of end. So, yeah, I mean, if he's selling NRP magazines out the back of the car, then yeah, you know what? I'll take a couple, 4 or 5 for the train home, at least.
Yeah, yeah.
I just like the magazines, especially that bring up older older nationalist happenings that kind of try to harken back to a tradition. Anyone can print off a article that they've just written about aesthetics or about nationalism, about getting involved, anything like that. I say that as someone who does that because, well, yeah. we've all got to shill ourselves a bit somehow. But the people who have the deep intelligence and the historical knowledge to make these kinds of references, like Chesterton was, both AK and GK, well, yeah, it's like gold, like diamonds. Stumbling upon it is like a gold rush. The article that I read just last night was a testimony, AK Chesterton's dying testimony, actually. And in it, he made all manner of great references and harkened back to his own personal tradition, his life, having fought for the British Empire, and then obviously being accused of betraying it in his final hours as a fascist. But no, Candle's good. Candle's good.
Yeah, I haven't read much of what any other party really puts out, to be honest, in terms of their magazines. Um,
Yeah, you
I
should. I
I
think
probably should, to be fair, because some of it's probably quite interesting and taking on the ideas of other parties and really having a look at what they're about. It because if you read the Hound again, I'm going to shill the Hound. Go and buy the Hound. It's really good.
the official
Um,
tabloid of the National Distributors Party. Go on, sorry.
but when the activists are allowed to put into writing their thoughts and what they believe their party should do going forwards, etc., it gives you a bit more of an idea of who the people behind the party is instead of just say if you read the if you go and read the British Democrats manifesto, it's obviously quite dry. It's a manifesto. You don't get the personality that shines through. Whereas if you read the Hound, for example, the personality of the party does shine through. It's more of a personal work than a party work.
Yeah, it's got a bit more character to it. I suppose that is, yes, that's what articles, what magazines and newspapers should aim to do. They shouldn't just be purely party updates. You save that for a newsletter or for your media accounts. I think some of it sprinkled in is good, but can be communicated in other ways, I think. It's just about, yeah, trying to make people understand that it's not just a brand, it's not a soulless shell, but it is a growing movement of dedicated, patriotic, and I think rightly minded people. That's obviously in the NDP's case, but many of these other nationalist parties that are cropping up or hanging around are still filled with good people. They're still staffed with decent people and are driven by a very decent intention. But it's just a matter of unifying it all, isn't it? I suppose when I look at other parties' magazines, I think that's really good work. But if only everyone was doing every other party's good bits themselves, if we were all a bit more connected, a bit more supportive, and we're all working together towards the same end, then perhaps our movement might be in a greater position. But that's why I'm so keen to pursue collaboration or at least contact with other nationalist organisations and parties. It's why I was quick to endorse Restore when it first started, because I had high hopes that it would become a nationalist vehicle. It's the jury's still out on it. It's why I endorsed Kai Stevens to stand in Clacton for the British Democrats, because as a distributors party, which they are by self-admission, fuck you to the people on the internet who claim it is not. They are also trying to do good, and they deserve all the airtime possible. Hence, I lent my small voice to giving it to them. But it's true for many organisations. That recent article from Hope Not Hate, our first appearance in their vaunted pages, focused on my support and contribution, however meagre it is, to Remigration Now. And I simply sat back and thought, are they particularly surprised that a party which is predicated on the mass deportation, voluntary and involuntary, the remigration essentially, of millions of non-British people, is endorsing a movement that is predicated entirely on that? No, they probably shouldn't be surprised, and nor should the British people. But journalists have to get their salaries somewhere, I do suppose. So they clung on to it. But as I said to someone else, putting me next to some of the big names in Restore, some of the big names in nationalism, it's like, well, it showed me how desperate Hope Not Hate were for a bit of a live bait, for a catch. You know, they put basically like they put like a 14-year-old German child next to Adolf Hitler, essentially, in terms of their contributions to the National Socialist effort.
In the way that they see the world, yeah.
Uh,
You're
I am Hitler. They basically put the coughing baby up against the hydrogen bomb, and it just didn't stick. Everyone I showed that article to thought it was ridiculous. They had sandwiched me between two far more radical people. And that's not to say that radicalism is bad. In fact, I wouldn't disavow any of the people who appeared in that article. But it was just funny to see how low the establishment and its various appendages will sink just to try and smear us. Just got to push on, I suppose. We know we're right.
What we need to do is we need to hire Hope Not Hate actually as our camera people because they took a really good photo. That image goes hard.
Of me.
Whereas any NDP
Yes.
photo we've ever taken is just like it's really amateur, but they've really got an eye for quality. So if you're listening, Hope Not Hate cameraman, there's a job here for you. I'll pay you.
We'll pay
Like
you
get
much
out there.
better. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And we won't replace you in your own homeland. That's obviously a very big draw of the job.
A very big benefit, yeah. I'm
Obviously,
trying to think.
if you're foreign, then we'll let you stay. You can be a resident, a foreign resident. But you know, just keep the camera rolling, lad. That's it's like the joke, isn't it? Oh, what am I going to do after the revolution? It's like, I thought I was going to mine coal. Fucking roll the camera. Get the
Yeah,
good
roll the
picture.
camera.
Get the good picture.
I wanted my 3 acres and a cow. Take the photographs now.
Yes. Another quick interjection from the internet was someone telling us, I shan't name them, that 3 acres and a cow nowadays is numerically impossible. And I just had to sit back, being unable to give my right of reply, and think, what? Yes, of course it's numerically impossible. It's not only a metaphor, it's also written for a country that existed a century ago. So,
Yeah.
yes, giving 3 acres to every single person now, 70 million of us, 15 or 20 million of whom are foreigners, is not going to work, no. I think some
I
people,
actually did.
in a similar way to some people who critique the Bible for being metaphor sometimes and real, actual, literal prose the rest of the time, these people are unable to understand metaphor and nuance, which is obviously a massive self-own.
I actually did the maths on the 3 acres and a cow thing. Essentially, if we take the population and we say that everybody couples up, they get married and they want 3 acres and a cow. This is the adult population, so this doesn't include children or pensioners. Because I'm sure a pensioner doesn't want to clear a bit of land right now. If they've got bargain hunt on their mind and Werther's originals,
Free
they don't
locks
want to
and a
clear some land.
pension. I was going to say, for them, it's free
Yeah,
locks
they're
and a
fine. They've got the
pension.
triple lock.
Triple lock!
So if every adult was say married or whatever, and
Yes.
we gave them a piece of farmland, we would still be able to give all of those people 1.5 acres of fertile farmland.
What was the number you came to?
What 1.5 acres?
No, 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 not of acreage. I mean, what was the population, the adult population number you came to? And does it
I
include
looked it up.
foreigners?
It does actually. It did.
Okay,
So
so
if you take away 15 million,
yes,
you probably get another
half an
half an
acre
acre,
each.
maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, obviously that is within our remit and will soon be officially within our policy. New manifesto is pending. I know the jackals of the internet can stay at bay for one more day on that. The the mass is fine, even when you try to position it as literal policy. It's a metaphor
Yeah.
for ownership and for responsibility. But yes, our unnamed detractors do not understand metaphor. Anyway, should we move on to the next topic?
Let's move on to the next topic.
What have you got for me?
So the next topic was, I mean, we've sort of covered infrastructure and sort of the wildfires going on right now. I think we sort of talked about it a little bit in during the aesthetics bit,
Hmm.
where we said our infrastructure is basically crumbling because our population's increased by 15 million extra people who you can't account for very well and can't forward plan for.
Yeah, and who we aren't planning for in the long term anyway. There's no sudden move to build a lot of new houses, reservoirs, power stations, any of that. Only a small one in housing, and that's it.
We're living in sardine can Britain. They're just sort of chucking as many people. It's the if we ground everyone together and put their dust in the silos, we could have a population of 1 billion, and the GDP would be insane.
It's true. He's not wrong there. If we stack
So
everyone 80 floors high and build over all the green space and all the brownfield, then yes, we could have a population of 27 billion and the GDP would just be immaculate. The financial
the quality
trades.
of life would be insane.
Oh, yes, of course. Mate, GDP directly correlates to quality of life. Were you not aware of this?
Oh, I see it all around me every day.
The
Yeah,
GDP.
yeah. The
It is
thing
the
is,
GDP in the
well,
room with us right now.
yeah. It's the GDP is the modern god for liberals. You know, we
Yes.
must sacrifice the country for the GDP.
GDP is further proof of the theological idea that everyone worships something. And once we sacked off God, Abrahamic God, we just filled that with, well, among other things, but primarily, yeah, the GDP.
Because
Molochite GDP.
essentially, yeah, essentially with distributist policy is we would revolutionize the economy again. We would completely restructure it and change it. So the chances are that after the first in the first year of NDP rule in a hypothetical, the GDP would shrink, right? Because, people would leave Britain, people would,
Be driven
multinational
out.
corporations would be leaving Britain and stuff.
Yes.
But because we would restructure it, the GDP would go down, but the quality of life would actually increase because
People.
we would have
Go on, sorry.
full employment, we would have cheap housing, we would have, all of these benefits that we could have, but the government decides, nah, the GDP is what really matters.
We would have a conscious society in the sense that we would have a society that is open to its own kin. You know, the British peoples, the ethnicities of these isles would no longer be deracinated. They would no longer be told that all colours are the same and all cultures are the same. And we would actually be actively encouraged to look after our kinsmen. And that is actually the main way, I think, in which life would improve in Britain. Because rather than turn our eyes away from the suffering of our kin, our countrymen, our fellow white Britons, we would be encouraged to open our eyes even wider to the injustices and the corruption and the suffering, and to do things, primarily on the local level, to alleviate it. And of course, as you touched on, there would be a necessary complete restructuring of the economy, which I've been told, again, by people online, is incompatible with a distributist system. But people fundamentally don't seem to be engaging with the principle of subsidiarity. The idea that if something cannot be done on the local level, it doesn't need to be. We're not trying to
Exactly, yeah.
shoehorn ineffective, almost Soviet-style economic policies into a system in which it will simply not function. We're simply saying that the things that can be done by locals should be done by locals, and the things that cannot need to be directed by a government that is vested with bottom-up representative power to make real, unpopular, difficult decisions that will set people up for the future. It's not going to be popular to address the massive imbalance on the pension budget. It's not going to be popular to deport many people who are unproductive and dangerous. It's not going to be popular to drive out these national corporations who provide us so many conveniences at premium prices. But ultimately, if we do not do it, then our culture, our ethnicity, our heritage, our history will all be annihilated. And so, difficult times call for difficult measures. We just have to be open to suffering together, not compounding and concentrating that suffering onto the lower class, but bearing the burden equally. Every single MP's income basically needs to be just axed. Turn them into volunteers.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can have a
I
free
liked what you
Greg's.
said about yeah, they can have free Gregs, yeah.
Free Greg's
That's the
trade-off.
Northerners everywhere
I know.
as MPs.
I
And
can.
Andy Burnham on every I liked what you said about we're not aiming for a Soviet style government. We aren't the revolutionary distributors party. We're not complete ideologues where we're gonna force things to fit where they don't and create dysfunction. We're a pragmatic party that where we understand that there are differences in modern Britain than there was, 100 years ago. It's nearly been 100 years since the Distributors League formed, and Britain is different in terms of how the economy works now. The plan written down 100 years ago doesn't have to be completely abided by 100%, because 100 years ago our cities had smokestacks and we had an empire, we had all of these things which we don't have now. We
20
don't even
million
have really an
foreigners.
industrial base anymore,
No.
and we had a sensible economic policy as well.
Yes. More
we
sensible, at
we
least.
weren't in a massive deficit. It's like it will be a long road to achieving distributism. It's not as simple as we get elected once and everything's fixed overnight. That's a childish view of politics, and that's what a lot of detractors of distributism almost think. They think that if we come into power, suddenly, oh, how am I going to get an orange because we can't grow oranges in the UK? But it's like we aren't going to stop the importation of oranges.
To prove
You
a
get what I
point.
mean?
To
Yeah,
prove a
like if
point,
we
yeah.
can do it in the UK, we will
Do it.
obviously set up the company to do it in the UK,
Hmm.
or help foster the an entrepreneur to take on that role of
In their
of
local
growing
area, yeah.
in their local area.
Yeah.
Whereas if it simply cannot be done, we're not going to turn the tap off and go, no, oranges aren't distributist, because that would just be counterproductive to quality of life as well. It's a pragmatic view of distributism, not a completely ideologically driven one. If you get what I'm trying to say.
I do. Yeah, it's not the kind of belief, the kind of social or economic critique that aims at cutting off its nose to spite its face. There are many things that we overconsume in this country that is not native to its own soil, and we should cut back our consumption of these things. But at the same time, there are many things in this country that are not native that we do still deserve as a dignified people, that we should still have access to as a dignified people, a modern people, a progressive people, if I can dare use that word. But these things can be achieved, they can be acquired by equitable trade that pays a fair wage. We do not need to resort, we should not have to resort to the enslavement of the third world to maintain our first world standards. And thus, we basically need to abandon the capitalist system without being plunged into the socialist, communist system. We need to walk that middle path that dignifies people as per the first and foremost principle of distributism, which is solidarity. And we need to do it as locally as possible, but make accommodations where it is not, as per the second principle of distributism, which is subsidiarity. Basically, it makes sense for us to consume the things, primarily, that are grown here, but as an advanced country, as a modern nation, we can still trade for access to other resources. We can still secure them in some way.
To tie the bow on this podcast today, it has been a very woke podcast today. We've said diversity is our strength, and you've come out as a
No, we didn't.
progressive.
We said we love diversity. Diversity is not our strength. I hate Cornish people. No. Well, yes, we've been very woke. But
It's been a
really,
woke podcast.
the takeaway from that is that people should not be shying away from certain language that definitionally describes what is sensible, what is righteous. We should be trying to progress towards something. This is, by the way, completely taking a tangent into linguistics. We should not be surrendering any kind of language, any kind of discussion or discourse to the enemy, which obviously is the internationalists, the globalists. We should be taking control of our language and of certain words that have been used against us until this time, and trying to rehabilitate them. Progressive is one of these words, and it will be unpopular for me to say this, but it should describe a utopian ideal, an ambition to provide to all British people an increasingly better standard of living. But rather, we have allowed progressivism to be defined as the ideology of sexual, social, racial, and political degeneracy. It is pushing in all the wrong ways. In fact, if you were to call it what it is, it's regressivism. We are regressing to sexual instincts and racial tribalism and political incompetency. We're moving away from all the things that Britain should be. So yeah, I mean, that's why I used progressive in this context. Obviously, when I go out into the world, I'm not going to call myself a progressive. I'm a distributist. I am a ethnic nationalist, or a normal nationalist, you can call them. Sensible nationalism. We all remember that. And I'm proud of my country. I'm British, ethnically and culturally, religiously. But yeah, we need to be prepared to have these discussions over nuanced language. People need to be prepared to introduce nuance into their politics more generally. The amount of people I've seen who react to a weakening Christianity, a more progressive and liberal Christianity, by becoming pagan is just mind-boggling. And the number of people, of course, who react to the establishment and its complete failure to uphold representative democracy by advocating for totalitarianism is also just mind-boggling. Because, the things that people critique in democracy are not democratic principles. People are not critiquing the government for being too democratic. People are critiquing the government for being too authoritarian, for engaging too actively and too heavy-handedly in surveillance and arrests and persecution. We're actually facing a growing Soviet totalitarian state in Britain, and thus all of our critiques should be directed towards this enemy, an enemy of international finance and Soviet progressivism. And what is the cure to those two evils? It is localism. It is distributism along ethnic, cultural, religious, and racial lines. And so it's basically just, sensible nationalism. Let's end on that. Another woke pillar from the
Let's end on
past.
sensible nationalism.
Sensible nationalism. Someone's going to clip that and be like, this guy, is this the new Kenny Smith? Did Kenny Smith eat this guy?
I think we've done this one before, guys.
Yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
they reckon Kenny Smith is dead. You know that? They reckon he's dead.
Wait, I know that he's not
He's dropped
like
off.
active on anything.
He's like Jacob Arday, which is also very topical news that we won't get into. But
Yeah, that's a
mate,
whole
he's
other
gone.
tangent.
He's gone. £60,000 sat in the Homeland Treasury. Who's going to pick up the crown from that guy? That is the question. Who is going to stumble upon the the El Dorado of nationalism, which is basically just like a very meager sum of money in the grand scheme of things. That's it, mate.
60,000 Kenny bucks is waiting in the street
Sensible bucks.
for anyone to take it up.
Okay, final question. Final question. Tyler, if you were still leader of the National Distributors Party, mate, and you stumbled upon £60,000, what are you doing with it?
Embezzling it. No,
Fuck you. All right, we'll end on that. Good night, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. I was Fraser, the current leader.
This was Tyler White, the previous leader. But yeah, we've had a good conversation today. Is there any NDP events coming up that anyone might want to go along to?
I usually cover it in the newsletters, but by the way, mailing list is free to join. Just email us. There is I'm attending a banner drop tomorrow in London for the National Housing Party, with whom we are similarly economically and culturally aligned. They aren't distributist, but they're quite close to it. They're quite close. They wouldn't describe themselves as it, I believe. But still, they're having a banner drop. In Preston, on the 29th of this month, August 2026, we are having a branch meeting. We are inviting all interested nationalists to come along. You can, again, email us for details, but that will be a litter pick followed by a pub social and organisation session. We are also planning a similar event in the southeast, somewhere around London, near the end of this month, although the exact date has not been confirmed just yet. I'm waiting to hear back from our new branch organiser there. And all of this is building up to a planned national conference in September for the party, the second of the year, in the northeast, probably to be held in York, but there are a number of places it can be held in the northeast. Anywhere with good rail connections, really. But yes, 2 branch meetings in the northwest and the southeast, followed by a national conference in the northeast. The southwest is quite quiet at the minute, but with increasing interest, that may change. The party grew by, I think I did the maths, it was 20% in July. And so, if we continue that sort of growth, we are looking at fulfilling my goal for the year, which, having started it with about 40 members, I was hoping to get to 100, if not 150. It's very small steps, of course, but at some point we will fall over the wall and will suddenly be hurting for the capacity to bring in and organise new members, rather than having new members to organise. What a lovely first world problem that would be. Too many members.
It would be amazing.
That would be amazing. So having too many sympathetic British voters, that would be a wonderful problem to have in the future. Anyway, we'll sign off there. Get in contact at nationaldistributorsparty@gmail.com for any inquiries into our policies, our principles, or our projects, our activism. If you want to get involved, very much the same. Or you can find us at nationaldistributorsparty.com, where you can sign up or simply email. And I am very accessible myself. I can be contacted on Twitter or through the party email, which is always redirected towards me. So, if you have any interest in distributism, about a truly nationalist, a truly reindustrialized, a truly Christian Britain, if you want to bring back the good old days, so to speak, and you want to do it seriously, you're not prepared to throw your money and your effort behind a populist party, a sloppulist party, if you will, then